start out with our flag pledge. So if you would all join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test, is it the truth?
Yes.
Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Yep.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And who do we have for invocation today?
That would be me. Whoops.
Well, thank you, Ted.
And my computer just went off on what I was going to read.
Right.
Oh, shoot. That's not any good. So let me see if I can find it on my phone while you talk a little bit.
Okay, maybe maybe we could have Heidi give her a little announcement before that. Is that okay with you, Ted?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to introduce Heidi to you, and Heidi, you can unmute here. She is our connection at Roseville Area High School, and I wanted her to come and just tell us a little bit about the scholarship that we awarded to them and how that's used. I think it's been long enough that I'm a little fuzzy on how it's used, so I thought maybe you would be too. So Heidi, I'll let you have the floor.
All right. Well, first of all, I just have to say that I grew up in a home where my dad was a charter member of the Big Sandy, Montana Rotary Club. And so from as long as I can remember, I can see his stationery that said service above self, and he lived it every day of his 95 years. So, so Rotary has a special place in my heart too. So anyway, so I'm not sure if all of you even know what AVID stands for. And so I can kind of just tell you a little bit about what the AVID organization is and kind of the expectations for the students that are part of AVID. And then maybe even just tell you a little bit about the Rotary AVID scholarship, how it's set up and what some of the requirements are for it. Does that sound kind of like what you're looking for?
That would be great.
Okay, so so what AVID is, that it stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. And so their mission is to close the opportunity gap by preparing all students for college readiness and success in a global society. And they do have some requirements to be a part of the program. It's an elective class that you take, and they have to apply for it, have teacher recommendations for it. So they have to have a GPA between 2.0 and 3.5 and maintain that. Otherwise, they're kind of put on a probationary situation. They need to show some college potential with support, and then a desire and a determination to be successful. And some of the requirements for being a part of the program, they might be the first in their family to attend college, or they are historically part of an underserved group of individuals in four-year colleges. Might be students that are coming from low-income families, or students that are experiencing some special circumstances in the home, for instance, maybe being raised by a non-custodial family member, or a single parent home, and some things like that. So, and what's really exciting for Roseville is we have attained the AVID demonstration school status, which is not an easy thing to come by. And so there are other schools that have the AVID program that are coming to our school to see how it's done, and the kinds of things that we're doing to be successful. So it's really kind of quite a coup for Roseville schools. And so what they've also done is taken some of the AVID strategies and put them into other classes that aren't even necessarily AVID classes, but using some of their, what they call wicker strategies, which is learning strategies in writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading. So it's really a wonderful program that kind of goes outside the boundaries of its initial intent. So, And then as far as the scholarship goes, usually we have about 2 classes of 28 students as seniors that have the opportunity to apply for the scholarship. And one of the big things about the scholarship and about the AVID program in general is they really are required to do a significant amount of volunteer work, which I think obviously that goes hand in hand with what Rotary stands for and promotes. And so, you know, I think it's great that they're kind of setting this as an example of how you should be as a citizen and as a student. And so it's great. So this is kind of what the scholarship reads. It says Roseville Rotary Club Scholarship was established to promote and encourage continued service to the community. And the scholarship for AVID graduating seniors attending a 2 or 4-year college or university. And it's 1 female and 1 male student will be awarded. And they have to have a 2.5 GPA or higher. And they have to have show an outstanding interest in voluntary and humanitarian service to the community. And so as part of the requirement for the scholarship application, they need to write about an achievement or an experience that they had during their high school years, and that how that's had kind of a significant role in their life related to volunteering. And then they have to list out all of the volunteering that they've done and what kind of thing they plan to study in college, and list out the different organizations that they've participated in, and also share if they've had jobs over their school year. So, so those, I've kind of talked a lot and fast. So if you have any questions specifically, I'd be happy to share what I know. But yeah, so that's kind of what it is about.
Well, thank you so much. That's wonderful. Very, very helpful little summary there. So appreciate you taking the time to come on and keep us informed about that.
You are welcome.
All right. Can we send it back to Ted for invocation?
Sure. Thank you for that, Heidi. That was great. I wanted to share a poem today called The Art of Parenting. Parenting is like carving a sculpture from glass. Too rough and it shatters. Too delicate and you have the edges too jagged and the corners too sharp. Sure to find failure and breed a selfish heart. The sculptor must bear the cuts and bruises if the piece is to become a true work of art, chipping away small fragments of imperfection each time a hateful yell or scream provides an examination. Molding character and values with imperfect hands. There are frequent failures and regretted actions, but you wake each day determined to do the best you can. From experience will come wisdom, and as soon as you become wise, you'll find you're a fool. This thing called parenting has no manuals or fit-alls and has few handwritten rules. Some days end with a rewarding smile, others with frustrating sighs, but the goal is not friendship or perfection. It's to prepare a child for life. That's a poem written by Justin Farley.
Thank you
Back to
very
you,
much.
Deb.
Yeah, thank you. Those are great reminders to keep in mind. Kathy, would you bring up our history picture, which is really recent history? This is from Saturday from the Roseville, the Snelling cleanup. And I've asked Galen just to tell us a little quick summary of their cleanup. Galen, we can't hear you. Can you unmute, Galen?
Oh, there it is. Now
There we go.
Yes. Saturday morning, I had an interesting crew of presidents cleaning up the Avenue Snelling streets. Started with past president and past district governor Tom User. We had past president Jim Osland. We had past president David Cray. Past president Ted Johnson from his club in Atlanta. And myself being a past president. And then we also had another guest, David Cray's son, Brian. So there's David Cray's son with the full beard. Had a nice weather. I found a quarter. I thought I was doing pretty good, but I got beat out by David Cray, who found $1. He also found a Swiffer, complete Swiffer. And I found 2 credit cards with expiration dates of 2026. I'm sure they've both been canceled already. And we found a lot of masks. It was interesting. Boy, the side streets or the ditches were filled with masks. I must have picked up 10 or 12 masks myself. And I was working with Tom User, and I know he got 10 or 12 masks.
I had 15, actually.
15. Wow. A lot of masks. Got our bags full, had a nice time. And even had one car stop by and thank us for our volunteer work. So that was kind of nice to have. We had a good time. So 6 of us, two to a team, 3 teams.
And you even got to wear your new vests.
We sure did. So we got to show off our Rsvl Rotary vests. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for doing that. We appreciate your commitment. And thanks, David, for coordinating it once again. So, all right. Well, I think that I'm going to go ahead and ask Ted. Well, are there any other announcements? Lynn Scott, you have an announcement, don't you?
I do. Thank you so much for remembering. I know I've been up on the speakers thing here for a little while. I don't know if Kathy has the little graphic that I had sent earlier. If you do, feel free to put that up. We just wanted to announce that the gardening project, I thought this was just perfect. What gives people feelings of power? Money, status, and growing a tomato. So if you would like, we would want to invite you to come out on Saturday morning between 9 and 11. It's our second planting in the garden over at the Y in Shoreview. And we'll be putting in some of the plants that day, such as the tomatoes, as well as the peppers, and then pumpkins, squash, and a lot of the herbs. The rest was planted 2 weeks ago, and I was over there yesterday watering the garden, and there's just a tiny, tiny row of green coming up under the radishes in that line, and it looks wonderful. So we will be harvesting later this summer. Maybe if you come out on Saturday, you'll get a pumpkin in October. There will be a sign up Genius website to sign up that will be coming out in email in the next day, and you can sign up there, or if you just want to put something in the chat today and say I'd like to come, feel free to do that. The garden tools are already there. The weather's supposed to be great, so see you Saturday morning anytime between 9 and 11. Thank you so much for everybody who's been helping out with the project.
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate your leadership on this too. So that will be it'll be fun to watch it grow, and look forward to the salsa too, right? All right, are there any other announcements?
Yeah, I would like to just add a little bit to Heidi. She may not know, but Arthur Anderson is, Anthony Anderson is a member of our Rotary Club, as is Dr. Michael Favor and Dr. Aldo Sicoli from the school district. And we are, ever since Greg Euland was one of the AVID coordinators, is when we started doing AVID scholarships. And I think it has been a wonderful usage of our money for and supported the community from our club. That's all.
Yes. Thank you for joining us today, Heidi. We appreciate it again. All right, Ted, I believe that you would like the opportunity to introduce our speaker today. Can I turn it over to you?
Yes, thank you, Deb. I would like to do that. It's my delight to introduce to you Sue Raush, a good longtime friend of mine from Atlanta. Sue grew up in Ohio. She attended Miami University there, and also the Cincinnati Academy of Graphic Design, and began a career in art in New York City. And shortly after that, I know she moved to Atlanta, but I don't know whether she moved to Atlanta to find her husband or her husband found her and moved her to Atlanta. But Sue is married to Harry Raush, an emeritus professor of English at Emory University. They have 2 sons and 3 grandchildren. Sue is the founder and president CEO of National Families in Action. She's also the executive editor and writer of the Marijuana Report e-newsletter. And I thought I'd just give you a little bit of background on National Families in Action from Wikipedia. It was founded in 1977 with a mission to help children succeed by empowering parents to create an academic and social environment where the kids can thrive and are protected from substance abuse and other high-risk behaviors. The organization obtained the nation's first state laws banning the sale of drug paraphernalia, for example. It helped lead a national effort to help parents replicate Georgia's laws in other states to prevent the marketing of drugs and drug use to children. And along with a number of some other organizations, they organized a national federation of parents for drug-free youth, which was serving around the country. And I wanted to see if I can find it here. I met Sue when I first went to Emory University, and one of my staff members at the library, I was library director, told me I needed to meet her and wanted to introduce me to her because she was had just organized with some other women, the National Families in Action, then called Families in Action in Atlanta. And they were interested in being able to do research on drug use and that kind of thing and figure out how to instruct parents with actual facts and truth, and wondering if they could use the library at Emory. And we said, of course, they could do that. And it wasn't too much longer after that I joined National Families Action myself. I ended up serving on that board for many years. They had gotten a grant at one point to develop, I think the Parent Corps in Atlanta. They started out in a number of low-income public housing facilities in Atlanta, working with primarily women with single mothers with families. We've met a number of really interesting people helping with that kind of program. I'm still in touch with a couple of folks like Harold Craig, you remember Sue, and Brandon Henderson, who was one of the kids in one of those places, and that family. So let me turn it over to Sue Raush. We're delighted to have you with us.
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. Let me go on and share the screen with you. Can you all set that up for me so I can share?
Yes, you're ready to go.
We're ready to go. Okay, so give me 1 second to get this set up.
We have your screen.
Okay, thank you. Can you see? Oh dear, I'm not going to be able to. Oh, here we go. 1 second. There we go. So one of the Ted is modest. He contributed so much to our organization and our work in so many different ways. And one of those ways was to have another staff member come over to our office when we were starting to collect information about drugs, scientific information, wherever we could find it. And that staff member helped us outline a series of categories under which we filed newspaper articles, medical journal articles, ephemera from all over, from the legalization groups, et cetera, and what parents were doing to prevent legalization and to protect kids. And so that collection has grown. It's in storage right now, but we're hoping to locate it at a major university or even maybe at the National Institute of Medicine, because the folks who have been advocating for legalization all these years have now got all of their papers in various places. And we want to make sure that our story is told. Ours not being National Families, but the parent movement that we helped create and maintain. And the first two directors of the National Institute on Drug Abuse credit that parent movement, which Mrs. Reagan adopted and reinforced and brought to the nation's attention. Those first two directors of the National Institute on Drug Abuse credit the parent movement with reducing illicit drug use among adolescents and young adults. So adolescents are 12 to 17 in the surveys, and young adults are 18 to 25. We reduced illicit drug use by 2/3 between 1979 and 1992. And then the legalization movement got some money, quite a bit of money, and began lobbying and floating ballot initiatives to start legalizing marijuana, first for medical use and then for recreational use. So since 2012, when Colorado and Washington were the first states to legalize recreational marijuana, we have put a great deal of focus on that effort because although the country thinks, A, that marijuana is medicine, and B, that marijuana is harmless, the science tells us a totally different story. And so we've dedicated ourselves to trying to get that information out to the public, no matter how many newspapers or how many spokespeople say this is a harmless drug that won't hurt anybody and everybody ought to be using it. So to give you that little background, I understand that Minnesota is about to legalize recreational marijuana. And I want to give you 6 of thousands reasons why you don't want to do that. So we'll start with these 6 reasons, and then I'll give you some information about how you can find out more information and try to educate your populace, your community, and your legislators. So reason number 1 is that marijuana use will double among the national average within a year or 2 of this passing, if in fact that happens. That is the case with every state that has legalized recreationally within a couple of years. They find that their marijuana usage rates are double that of the national average, especially among 18 to 25-year-olds, and especially interestingly among the baby boomer generation, the over 26 folks. And that has never happened in the history of drug use in America until legalization began. So reason number 2 is that youth vaping marijuana concentrates will double and triple and quadruple. It is quite frightening to realize that the phenomenon of kids vaping marijuana did not exist just a few years ago. There was no such thing as vaping marijuana. And all of a sudden, nearly a third of our high school students and middle school students are vaping marijuana concentrates. What's a marijuana concentrate? Okay. In the 60s, in the 70s, and the 80s, and the 90s, the THC levels in marijuana that was grown illegally and that people were smoking was 4% or less. It didn't become 5% until the year 2000. Now, with the legalization of marijuana and with the continuous perfecting the product, you can now buy in rec legal stores marijuana that has a THC concentration of anywhere from 50 to 90%. And that is a high risk level of intensification of THC, and it is causing all kinds of problems, some of which I'll show you in a few minutes. So marijuana concentrates are what are vaped. They are also dabbed. And in fact, there's a process called dabbing where you have a rig, a glass rig, where you put some concentrates in a little chamber and use a blowtorch to heat it and then suck all that stuff up into your lungs. It's not good for you. And the vaping epidemic that we had a few years ago, with people showing up at hospitals unable to breathe, kind of a precursor almost of COVID, although it was a totally different phenomenon. Is just one example of how a product can suddenly morph into a dangerous product can morph into a super dangerous product. Marijuana-related physical and mental health problems will also increase in Minnesota. The psychiatrists in Ireland, the National Association of Psychiatrists, is so alarmed about the number of kids who are using marijuana daily and using at high concentrated rates, that they are seeing a fourfold increase in mental illnesses among adolescents showing up at hospitals and emergency rooms for help. And they are so concerned about this that the society is beginning its own education campaign, because it fears that it will not have enough specialists, psychiatrists, to treat the kinds of mental health problems that they're seeing as this increases. That's also happening in our country. It's just better documented in Ireland right now. So you can count not only on mental health problems, but physical problems. And again, it's the concentrates of marijuana, of THC in marijuana, that are causing a good number of the problems, especially the mental health problems. We are doing some research with other organizations to try to document how many of the mass shooters have been using marijuana or are regular users of the drug. And it's astonishing to see how many there are. In the process of doing that, we've learned that some states don't even test for the presence of marijuana in the body of the shooter who ends up killing himself or being killed. Maryland, for example, does not test for THC in any kind of automobile fatalities or any other kind of accidents or crashes or shootings. And so one of the things, if your state does legalize, that you're going to need to do is to begin to become aware and advocate for appropriate measurements of what is actually happening to people as marijuana is legalized in your state, if in fact it is. You've got 10 more days before your legislature closes, May 17th, I think it is. And 7 more days you got. And so you can still, it's not too late to ask your legislators not to do this, not to pass legalization. And that will be your safest and best bet. But if they do, then you're going to need, as citizens protecting kids, you're going to, and young people, you're going to need to be able to demand from your legislature that they put in place certain provisions to measure what's happening to people and to regulate appropriately. Some of the legalization states right now are floating efforts to cap the amount of THC allowed in marijuana products back down to 10% or even 5%. And the marijuana industry is all over the legislators saying, don't do that, don't do that. So what you create with legalization is a massive industry that is exactly like the tobacco industry. It knows the science as well as we do. It targets kids, young people, underage people, and it knows that a certain percent of those people, those children, will become lifelong customers, guaranteed. And so the marijuana industry is playing, it's taking every page out of the tobacco playbook. And so there are preventive measures and public health measures that can be taken to prevent some of that. The very best way is don't do it. But if you legalize, then you need to begin to advocate for provisions that protect the public health. Traffic fatalities will double in Minnesota. They are already doubling in most of the early rec legal states. And that just is the fatalities. Your accidents on the road will increase, the injuries will increase exponentially, and you will suffer a loss of people in traffic fatalities that will be double what you're suffering today and what you're tolerating today. Taxpayers will bear the cost of regulating marijuana, and nobody looks at this issue. Nobody does. But in the state of Colorado, someone has done a study, a very comprehensive one, that finds, as of 3 years ago when they did the study, that found that for every dollar of tax money Colorado communities and the state and cities received, it cost Colorado taxpayers $4.50. The figures for alcohol and tobacco traditionally are $10 for every tax dollar brought in. And we have no reason to think that the marijuana situation won't equal that soon. But meanwhile, it's right now in Colorado, at least, it's costing every taxpayer $4.50 for every dollar the marijuana industry is bringing in taxes and fees. So you need to remember that as well. And this is perhaps the most distressing aspect. What you find is that every time a state legalizes recreational marijuana, even though a majority of citizens will vote for the ballot initiative that makes that happen, the thing that happens is that there are opt-out provisions, at least in the early laws that legalized, and you'll find anywhere from 60 to 80% of local communities within a state immediately opt out. They don't want any part of the business, no growing, no processing, and no sales. But then what happens is the marijuana industry sends in, it uses some of its millions of dollars and billions of dollars to lobby local officials. And often money changes hands, not always, but often. And the marijuana industry is hell-bent for leather on persuading local officials to opt in, no matter what the citizens want, who are led by these local officials. So now the marijuana industry has cottoned on to the power of opt-out provisions such that it is lobbying state legislators not to have opt-out provisions. And many states that have legalized or are legalizing don't have opt-out provisions anymore. So the industry's gotten rid of those. That's not a good thing either. So a way that you can find out more about this and other drugs as well is through our website. This is the National Families in Action's website, and I'm showing it to you so when you go there, you'll know that you're in the right place. The way to get there is National Families, all one word, families is plural.org, with a www in front of it if you want, but that'll get you to it. And although it's hard to see this, this is where you can find out everything about the marijuana report, and I will tell you more about that in a little bit. This is where you can find out about the new parent movement that is being driven out of California. And this is where you can find out about our Science Advisory Board. We are privileged to have some of the most renowned, worldwide renowned scientists who study marijuana on our Science Advisory Board. And last year, with a grant from the Annie Casey Foundation, we were able to bring them each to Atlanta, Ted, to the new Digital Scholarship Center at Emory University, which has a magnificent sound booth. And we created a series of podcasts with each of our scientists talking about what everyone needs to know about marijuana. And so if you go to this section of our website and pull down the menu, it will take you to the podcasts and to each of the scientists and what they do. In fact, this is the page that explains to you, that's the first page you'll see about the Science Advisory Board. And you can meet them here. I don't know, can you see my arrow when I'm doing that or not? Okay.
No, I can't.
Cannot. Okay. Well, so meet that's underlined. If you click on that, it takes you to the page that tells you about the Science Advisory Board. And then access that's underlined will take you straight to the podcast page. And you can listen to the podcast as you want to. And this is the introductory page for the marijuana report. And I'm going to show you several things that this page will take you to. The first is the marijuana report website. And this website has about 10,000 entries on it under 6 broad categories: marijuana legalization, marijuana health, marijuana criminal justice, etc. And you can go sideways to just capture one after another story that's in the press or a medical journal article, etc. This is the, across the top where it says United States, this is the national average. These are actually each state. The yellow states are below the national average, and the blue states are recreational legal states, and they're above the national average, as you can see. And then this is the marijuana report. This is our newsletter, and it's free, and it comes into your email box every Wednesday, usually in the mid-afternoon, sometimes in the late afternoon. And it usually has from 6 to 10 stories about what's going on in the previous week in the nation, which states are legalizing, what parents and families and communities are doing to try to prevent legalization, what the marijuana industry is doing and the advocates are doing. One of the more distressing aspects of the marijuana playbook, which began with the tobacco playbook, is that now states are beginning to legalize everything. There's this article on the front page of the New York Times today about psychedelics being the new medicine. There is research that shows some psychedelics like psilocybin and MDMA or ecstasy may indeed have legitimate medical effects, but the same thing is happening with the psychedelics that happened with marijuana, and that is that just because an addictive drug might have some usefulness in medicine does not mean we need a commercial legalization effort for that particular or those particular drugs, and it's already happening with psychedelics. So I recommend that article to you. It'll be in this Wednesday's marijuana report if you choose to subscribe. And then finally, because we have published now at least 1,500, and it grows every week, stories about the marijuana world and its space, we have put together an index, and you can go to this index and press on the little play button and get a demonstration of what the index looks like and how it works. And fundamentally, what it does is list every single story that we've ever published. I should say, and neglected to say, that on both the website and the e-newsletter, we summarize in lay language what the scientists are telling us, but we also provide a link to at least the abstract of that medical journal article or the full text if it's available. And ditto newspaper articles and other kinds of sources. We never, sometimes we will editorialize and we don't provide a link, but otherwise everything that we are summarizing has a link to the original source. So in the index, we have the title, we have the URL that will get you to the issue that particular title is in. We have the source that we used to summarize the article, and we have a subject catalog index. So you can search by subject, and you might remember reading something 2 or 3 issues ago, but you can't remember which issue it's in and you can't find it. You can just go to the index and search it by subject matter, and then find the title and click on the link next to it. And up comes the issue with the article that you're looking for. You just scroll through it to find it. And we are, as I said, the Marijuana Report newsletter is free. The index is $75 a year and $50 for annual renewals. And and we're just about to launch it. We're very excited about it. People are finding it, who have bought it, are finding it very, very useful. So, oops, let me see if I can get back. Okay, I wanted to show you one more thing. The Marijuana Report website, if you click on that title, that will get you to the website. If you click down here on subscribe, in the middle column at the bottom, you can subscribe to the Marijuana Report for free. And if you click on the Marijuana Report index, that will take you to a page that explains its cost and how it works. And that's my presentation. What I would love to do is answer your questions, because I'm sure you'll have some.
Well, thank you very much. If you have a question or a comment, or actually limit it to questions, and we'll try to have a respectful opportunity to ask those questions. You can either raise your hand or go ahead and do the hand signal or something like that. You want to end the screen share? I can't figure out how to do that. Galen, go ahead. You're still muted, Galen.
Oh, there I am. Yeah, very interesting program, Sue. A question is, what's the level of addiction, or how addictive is marijuana compared to alcohol, or compared to meth, or compared to cocaine?
That's a great question. And the answer is that we used to think that about 1 in 9 marijuana users became addicted, and 1 in 16 children. But now the research is showing it's even higher. And it's about 30% of daily users.
Daily users.
Addicted.
30%.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Lauren.
That's going to go away in minutes.
A follow-up to that, is it a psychological addiction or a physical addiction that you're talking about with the 30%?
It's both. It's both.
It's both. Okay. And the next question that I had was, you said that it cost government about $4 for every dollar that went into the marijuana industry.
This was in Colorado, yes.
In Colorado, okay. What are the sources of the government expenses, or what are the pockets that the money comes out of?
You mean, what does it cost to regulate? Is that
well? Regulation, I'm sure, is part of it.
Yeah, regulation is indeed, but also doing things like, for instance, if a traffic fatality occurs and there's alcohol as well as marijuana on board, it's cheaper to test for alcohol. And so if the alcohol test is positive, often there's no marijuana test given. So we don't know what role marijuana might have played in that death.
So how much would you attribute to marijuana in that situation?
More than we are getting our hands around, because again, so often that happens where alcohol is tested for, but then it stops because the alcohol test is considerably less expensive than the marijuana test. There's a big debate in the world about when are you impaired by marijuana? We've got a 0.8 level on alcohol, but there's no equivalent for that kind of a test. And if you do a blood test for marijuana, I'm blanking on the name of our science advisor, the woman who is our only woman science advisor.
You're dodging the question here.
Podcast to you.
You're dodging the question here. If I get pulled over and they test me for alcohol, and they do not test me for marijuana, and is there an assumption that I had marijuana in my system? No, and there's some dollar amount attributed to marijuana use?
No, I'm talking about fatalities. When a fatality occurs, when a driver who is killed in a marijuana accident, if he is tested for alcohol, But if the alcohol test shows that he had alcohol in his system, that's the end of the story. The test for marijuana is way more expensive, and so many states are not utilizing that test. So we can't really tell who is responsible or what drug was responsible for that particular accident.
Okay, so back to the initial question. In that scenario, my initial question was about the dollar allocation to marijuana use. How many dollars or what percentage of dollar allocation would be attributed to marijuana when they did not test for it?
Okay, and that's coming from the Colorado example where it's $4.50. Taxpayers are paying $4.50 for every dollar of marijuana tax revenue. Okay.
Right, $4.50 for that and $10 for the alcohol, I think are the numbers you used.
Yes, $10 for alcohol and tobacco, and that's a given in the literature, in the research literature, and I can send you examples of that if you would like. But I will also refer you to National Families in Action's website under the category or the tab that's reports, because you can find that report from Colorado and you can see all of the things, all of the costs that they incurred, that the state incurred to regulate the drug and to track what it was doing to people. Does that make sense? You can look at that report.
Okay, so basically you've just referred me to the report so I can read it for myself.
Right.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
It's better. I think it's better. We are original source people from the get-go.
Heather, Lynn Scott. You just froze up, Lynn. I don't know.
Thank you, Sue. I appreciate hearing. Do you hear me yet?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Sue. I wanted a clarification on one of the statistics that you used, that traffic fatalities will double in the state of Minnesota with legalized marijuana. I think that's what was said. And my question is, are you talking about all of the fatalities or the fatalities using marijuana? For example, if we had a total of 100 fatalities in Minnesota and then we legalized, are you talking about that would double to 200, or we would have 100 fatalities, 3 were attributed to marijuana, and that would double to 6?
That's a great question.
Does that make sense? Are we doubling the marijuana usage fatality?
It makes perfect sense. And it is marijuana-related traffic fatalities will double, which is what's happened in Colorado and in Washington and in several other states, according to the National Traffic Safety Association.
Okay, I just missed part of that. Oh, what actually will double? I got the reference, but.
Marijuana-related traffic accidents will double.
Okay, so we're not doubling all of the fatalities. We're just doubling the marijuana-related ones.
That's right.
And the second question I would have is the CDC put out a study that showed that from 2011 to 2015, they were tracking marijuana usage. And after that, when Colorado and Washington, they were tracking marijuana usage for young people. And after Washington and Colorado legalized marijuana, they were continuing to review that, track that, and they did not find any significant increase in the amount of young people using marijuana. So I'm a little concerned about just the statistics and how we read those, and you heard that in my first question. So I find your presentation exciting to hear about.
Another great question. The CDC does something called a Healthy Kids Survey there is another survey that's done by this SAMHSA, it's called, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And a third survey is done of kids, high school students and college age students, called Monitoring the Future. And that comes from the National Institute on Drug Abuse. The latter two surveys are thought to be more reliable. The SAMHSA survey breaks it down by state. The CDC survey, it's complicated, but states do their own version of the CDC survey and then decide whether or not to submit that data to CDC to be included in the national survey. And they can choose not to do that if they want to. So the CDC's national survey, I'm going to have to get in the weeds to explain this to you a little bit, so I'll try not to be too complicated. But the CDC survey says that it's a valid, their survey is valid if they get a 70% response. The Colorado and Washington both do their own Healthy Kids surveys. They're not part of the CDC survey. And the Colorado survey the most recent one had a very low response, meaning that the kids who took the survey were answering only for themselves. You couldn't extrapolate what the kids who took the survey were doing to other kids. So that there's a huge difference in a 70% response and a 30% response. In other words, the Colorado survey was invalid, but still they can make that claim.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you for sharing. I appreciate that.
It's complicated.
Are there any other questions? So I think at this point, I will say thank you, Sue, for being with us today. In honor of our speakers, we do plantings in the Rotary Woods and Rain Gardens at the Rsvl Central Park. So we'd like to thank you. And Jenny, would you let us know who we can hear from, who we can expect to hear from next week?
Yeah, well, we have our very own member, Scott Shelburne, who has joined us recently with the Salvation Army. And so he's going to give us kind of a member update on him, as well as share what is happening with the Northern Division of the Minnesota and North Dakota Salvation Army.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, I'd like to thank you for being at Roseville Rotary today, and the meeting is adjourned. So thank you very much.